Well, thank you for joining us this morning. My name is Njenga, and I'll be taking through the biz check from now till midday. And of course, we'll be looking at various issues that are also happening around the country. We'll be giving you an update on, of course, the Marikiti demos that are ongoing. And also we'll be having various departmental committees sitting down. We'll be giving you an update. We have a team from here in Parliament who will be giving us an update on that. We'll also be looking at the launch of the Nairobi River Regeneration Project, which will be happening in Korogosho. We'll also be having an update from Narumoru from our reporter John Jacob Curia on the Hillside Narumoro fire update. Remember yesterday there was an anticipated, of course, update in regards to the post-mortem, but it didn't happen. We're expecting it to happen today. And of course, we'll be having that update from him in Narumoro. That is John Jacob Curia. And also we'll be having an update from the government spokesperson today at KICC. Those are the events that we'll be looking at for, but also here in studio, the topic of discussion this morning, of course, is on food safety. We'll be looking at the global pesticide industry. Remember, it's a multi-billion industry. And just to give you, just to paint a picture of how the industry is, in 2020, Kenyan farmers spent about $72.7 million on pesticides products. And to break down this for us, I am joined by Lawrence Kalawa, who is the general manager, PCPB, that is the Pest Control Products Board. That is, he is just on my immediate left. And on the farther left, I am joined by Robert Koigi, who is a principal lab analyst at KBC. Welcome to our studios, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Now, let's look at the pesticide industry and just look at the overview and where we are in terms of the industry. We know the situation is bad, and I would like to know how bad is the pesticide situation in Kenya and how it has it hampered food safety? I'll start with you. Yes, Lawrence.
Thank you, Madam. To open the discussion, one point we need to recognize is that pesticides are hazardous by nature. That's the very purpose they are useful in the agriculture, to manage the pests and also to control the various diseases. So by nature, they are hazardous. The discussion around the pesticides now is how to use them and guidance of the available mitigations. So we have put out a number of mitigation measures so that we can use the pesticides appropriately, so that now we can take care of the dangers associated with the pesticides. There are different classification of pesticides depending on the toxicity classification. There are four many classes. There's class 1, which is very highly toxic pesticides. Then class 2, 3, and 4 in order of reducing toxicity. Or they are available in the country. So because of these variations with respect to toxicity levels, we advise the farming community or the growers to use the pesticides beginning with the less toxic pesticides. The class 4, which is green coded, then you move to class 3, which is the color codes on the bottle is blue, yellow, and many times we don't allow the use of class 1s in agriculture because they're highly toxic pesticides.
Okay, maybe you can mention on how has it hampered food safety in the country?
Yes, as I said earlier, the pesticides are poisonous, and if they're not used carefully, they can affect the food safety.
Okay, so how has the use of pesticides evolved in the agriculture sector over the last decade?
Yeah, over the years, we have found an increasing number of pesticides in terms of types of active ingredients, in terms of the quantities. The number has been growing over time, and the reason has been the emerging pests, the emerging diseases, and also there's also the increasing land and agriculture. So the reason behind increased number of pesticides by variety and quantities, one is the emerging pest that I'm developing from within or transboundary movement of pests, and also the increased land and agriculture has also created more demand for pesticides in the country.
Okay. Lawrence, coming to you, is there data available concerning the use of pesticides and also the concentration of pesticides in water, soil and food, and also the related impacts?
Yes, the data is there, especially now imports is up and online. You can train the platform. We are able to generate the data of all the types of pesticides that are used in the country, and also that are important. Remember, what is important and what is used. We can account for what is important and what is used within our country. Okay. There is a database available online.
Okay. Robert, I know this is your area and you well know and you're well versed with it. I'd like to know whether you release data concerning use of pesticides, and also is this data easily available to farmers?
Yes, thank you, Wairimu, and for hosting this very important conversation. And it's important because data is as good as available to the people who are supposed to be the end users of the data. As an institution, we have generated quite a bit of information and data concerning pesticide residues. And I can say we have what we call a risk-based residue monitoring plan, which is multi-annual, that is conducted every other year. And with that, we target produce that is consumed locally and also what is exported. And we have been able to produce a lot of information, a lot of data across various food value chains. And also this data can be used to support issues that we are talking about. And maybe to add on to that is information that is readily available. We have been trying also to provide the same information to the people who are in the value chains. Talk about our colleagues, the regulators, in ministries, departments and agencies. We have also gone a step further also to the counties and actually being able to furnish this information so that when they meet with the farmers, because they are the last point of contact with the farmers, they can be able to advise based on data that is produced by a competent facility.
Okay.
So yes.
Looking at regulation and of course safety, what regulations are in place to ensure the safe use of pesticides in Kenya?
Yes,
yes, Robert, go ahead.
There are quite a number. If I talk about KFIS and because that's where I can start from there. We are a regulatory agency in the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Development, and we check on the quality of agro inputs and produce, to prevent adverse effects on the economy, environment, and human health. So that basically tells that we are in the space of food safety, and in that we are also mandated to actually administer and enforce sanitary measures and phytosanitary measures. And when you talk about supporting is because we know food safety is spread across many other sectors. So we do our part in terms of supporting, in terms of inspections, facilities which are people who export. And also that other aspect, we are talking about the local consumed produce, where we go to the markets, pick up that data, and share with other people.
Okay.
So there are regulations, and again, I can say they are not domiciled in one institution. They are across pieces of legislations across many other institutions.
Okay.
Yes.
But how effective, Lawrence, are these regulations in controlling distribution and usage of pesticides?
Yes, thank you very much. We have the Pest Control Powers Act, which is implemented by Pest Control Powers Board as the main act, and the regulations that have been put in place now to unbundle the act, and we have the regulation guiding on importation of pesticides is well described there for importers to observe the same. We have also the regulation on the licensing and certification of all the outlets where pesticides are being stored for use by growers. That regulation also exists. We have a regulation also to advise the users of pesticides on how to read the instructions. This is the labeling, packaging, and advertisement regulation. We also have a regulation on disposal of these pesticides. Again, this one also guides on how we handle the disposal of pesticides in the event there's a need to dispose the same.
Okay. Is there like is there like a data available, not even data, do you go to the grassroots to ensure that these farmers maybe are educated on proper use and handling of these pesticides?
Yes, we do. Actually, one of the big mandates at the PCPB is creating awareness to the farming community, and we organize many awareness creations. We do a lot of capacity building to stakeholders, including the growers. And a case in mind is the last ended financial year, we managed to do a total of 122 training awareness creations to the farming community and the general public at large. So we have that component of reaching out to the growers and other stakeholders in the pesticides industry.
Okay. Robert, what are the environmental risks associated with the excessive use of pesticides?
Yes, there are many environmental risks associated with the use of pesticides. And one way we know that if, for example, if you use pesticides not the way they're supposed to use, there's a likelihood of actually getting them into the wrong places in the environment. For example, if you talk about, drifts in pesticides, you have issues around wash-off. When you spray and it rains, some of those might end up in rivers and lakes where they're not supposed to be. And also, there is also the other aspect of actually not observing, issues around disposal of even the pesticides containers that, farmers use. Because you'll find that if they are not disposed the right way, if they are not collected and disposed the right way, that might end up in the environment. We have also seen issues around getting some of the pesticides detected in other matrices which are not food. Fish, for example. If you talk about misuse of pesticides, they'll find themselves in the water, and even the fish and food that you are consuming gets the same pesticides that have been used in the field. So there is actually that likelihood associated with misuse or lack of proper use of pesticides in the farms. Yes.
How do you dispose our pesticides?
Yes.
Continue. Yeah.
I said earlier, under the Pest Control Practices Act, we have a regulation that guides on disposal of pesticides. It's very well described for everyone to read and follow the procedure of disposal. We also have a responsibility to inspect these sites or these facilities where these pesticides are being disposed of, and this happens together with National Environmental Management Authority. There are not very many. We have about 5 now in the country that are under the supervision of PCPB and NEMA, and they have been approved to dispose pesticides waste and any other pesticide that require disposed for whatever reasons.
Okay. What are the significant maybe health concerns related to pesticides used in Kenya, particularly for farmers and consumers? Go ahead.
Thank you. There are implications. As we had before, pesticides are basically they are poisons. They are supposed to be used judiciously when according to the label, because pesticides have both sides. They are on both sides of the coin. They can be good and also they can be harmful. And looking at what are the effects is that if the pesticides are used off-label, without observing the good agricultural practices as stipulated on the label, including issues around observing the post-harvest intervals, using the right dosage in terms of when you're applying, issues around even when you're applying, how's the weather, is it raining, is not, is it optimal for application of pesticides? They definitely find themselves where they are not supposed to be. So there are detrimental effects of pesticides, and we know most of the pesticides, and data is there to show, they can be carcinogens, if not used the right way. They can also be, they are endocrine disruptors, so they can actually, affect human health in terms of hormonal balances. They can also, they are neurotoxins, in terms of nerves and, issues around pesticides, issues around pesticides effects. So they are actually those detrimental health effects even now, moving from also that, you can also have issues around trade. They, we have heard about trade issues which are actually brought by harmful effects of pesticides, or pesticides actually being found in food that people are consuming.
Okay. Yes. And we'll come to that, Robert. But before we delve into that, I'd like to know, earlier on, Lawrence, you talked about the different classes of pesticides. And I would like to know how many pesticides have been banned in Kenya.
Thank you. Again, banning for purposes of this show means that the pesticide has been withdrawn from the surface of the earth. That means that product is not available anymore. Manufacturing, production is stopped at the global level. And this happens at the at the international level, where submissions are made against a pesticide to be banned, and once it's successful, it's banned at the global level. And the same is cascaded to all parties to that debate, and the list is generated and is posted at the PCPB website. The list is long. We can refer to that list in the website, which is dynamic, changes with the time. But many have been banned, and they are listed in the website so that now everybody is aware of those products.
Okay. I'd like you to read for you some statistics here by route to food. And they say that 76% of the total volume of pesticides used in Kenya are categorized as highly hazardous, and 44% of these pesticides are banned in the European Union. Do you agree with those statistics?
That they may not be correct, because one, pesticides are banned by nature. So the one HHP is used depending on the platform of the debate. Number two, banning is a global decision. Banning is a global decision. So once a pesticide is banned, Kenya being a party to that workshop extends that banning in our country. There is a difference between the banning and withdrawal. What is happening in the EU is withdrawal of certain pesticides. Withdrawal is putting aside. We don't want to use these particular pesticides. That's different from banning. Banning is different from withdrawal. What EU is doing is actually withdrawing the use of particular active ingredients or pesticides.
Okay. Kenya has been facing, of course, coming to the monitoring of residue. We have seen Kenya facing cases of farm interceptions in key markets due to high residue levels. How can we prevent this, Robert?
Okay, thank you on the question. There are many issues around, interceptions, because you see we have trading partners where we have actually to comply to their own import requirements. And when you talk about food safety, and in this particular case, pesticide residues, so every importing country have their own pesticides, maximum, they're called maximum residue levels, MRLs. And these are based on, because actually when you go about defining what is an MRL, because this is the maximum legally permitted level of a residue in food or feed. So they have those set limits. So what happens is that if consistently you don't check on your gap, what we talked about, good agricultural practices, and you are exporting to those countries, chances are that what will be getting to those countries in their border, through their borders, will have higher than normal residues, what we are calling above maximum residue levels. Okay. So a point in case is the EU, where we have had cases of interceptions, because this is our main trading partner when you talk about beans and peas in pods, and we have had interceptions because of our practices. So what we have been doing is to, as an institution, is actually to enforce or try to create awareness about issues food safety and market compliance. And one way has been, since we are involved in registering, these exporters through our electronic certification system, we have a port where actually they are registered so that they can export. We are able to take them through the, the process, the requirements. And in case, unfortunately, you have an interception of a company, a notification from our trading partner, to protect that trading, that trade in the commodity, we actually stop your export. Then we are able to look at your systems as an exporter. Then we can be able to help you, or work with you. You put remediation measures, and once you have put good food safety management systems in what you are producing, you're able again to resume your export. This is the interest of actually safeguarding the consumer on the other side, as well as also maintaining our trading niche, with some of these European countries.
This process will take how long?
It's a very short process. If, for example, you receive a notification and immediately you start that process of actually putting your systems in order, it can take as short time as possible, so long as you actually put those measures in place, and we are convinced that again you can be able to export.
Okay.
Yes.
Lawrence, what are the recommended residue levels globally?
The recommended levels for maximum residue levels, again, this is a global decision which is handled at Context Alimentaria. Is an establishment of member countries around the world, and they are discussed and determined at that meeting, and they are published globally for all parties to observe. So the recommended rates are the ones that are pronounced under context. Those are ones should be used at a global level by all partner countries.
Okay, I know, Lawrence, you've been referring us to your website. I'd like to give us that website, as well as that the farmers can go and check. But I'd like to just, you from where you sit, you explain to farmers how to identify legitimate products, and also explain the proper use and handling of these pesticides, if I may take you back a little bit.
Thank you, madam. For the growers or the farmers who are procuring pesticides for use in their farms, the entry point is going to that store where these pesticides are stored for sale. And once the farmer arrives there, there are many pesticides there for different uses. So, and the parameters for choice are similar. So for instance, a farmer going there to get a product for spraying, for example, in potatoes, you get a pesticide, and the first thing you see on the primary panel, there are two panels of the package. The first item the farmer should read there is the trade name of that product. Then below the trade name, there will be the description of that product. For instance, a fungicide for control of early blight in potatoes. That kind of opening statement. So that the farmer now is informed. This pesticide is for use in potatoes for this particular disease. So it's stating there for himself. Then after that, the farmer should read the PCPB registration number, which is on every package of the product. And there will be abbreviations there, PCPB, in brackets CR, which are capital letters, the number given. And this number is to identify that product, and the number is only unique to one particular registration. It's like ID for the ID issued to Kenyans. So every product has an ID, which is the registration number. That one should appear there prominently. Then the other item, the farmer will see there, you see the concentration of that product. The active ingredient is also declared. Again, on the primary panel, there will be the declaration of the manufacturer of that product or that pesticide. I think manufacturers are, by up to 95%, are foreign companies. So the addresses will be from foreign countries. Then on the right side of the primary panel, again, you find now the local agent, the person or the company who is supposed to manage that product within the country. This one must be a local company. So if you find an agent who is not local, again, it triggers that this product will not be the correct one. The weight will be declared there. We also find the manufacturing date of that product, the date this product or this was manufactured. And along next to it, there will be now the expiry date of that pesticide for the farmer to read before leaving that shop. And then it also provides now the shelf life, which is the difference between the manufacturing date and the expiry date at the time this product is active. The package is also going to show at the bottom there the classification coding and WHO, the one I described earlier. There will be a green color color code, there's a yellow color code, and a blue color code, and then there is also a red color code, but this class is not available in the retail outlets. So the farmers should see those features there. At the bottom there, there's what we call the pictograms. The equipment, the personal protective equipment are also displayed there, so that the farmers are advised when handling this pesticide, put this particular kind of dressing to protect yourself against exposure. This is not about the primary panel. There's the secondary panel, which is written in 2 languages. One version in English, the other version in Kiswahili, so that now the farmers are able to read in either language, so they don't make mistakes. And this secondary panel will contain, among others, the directions for use. How do you mix? The combination ratios, for example, how many mils with this particular pesticide against amount of water given there. It also gives the details of crop age. It will provide us the pre-harvest interval. This is the period the farmer waits after applying before you harvest. Okay. It also gives how you dispose that container and the waste around it. It also informs, in the event there is poisoning, what to do. There's a way of procedure of doing a first aid, and the number is also provided there where you call. There's a number there where you can call, and it lands at Kenyatta National Hospital, and this person might have been injured by the pesticide is advised on the urgent first aid can undertake before this person is taken to a doctor. There is also the way it's supposed to be disposed, and there is a reminder there that the moment the farmer picks up the pesticide, that pack from the shop, now the farmer takes responsibility. Whatever happens after there, whatever happens after you've procured, you've bought, you've gone with it, now the rest is upon you.
So it is important to read the instructions carefully.
Very well. In fact, the instructions are there for the farmers to use. And any farmer actually uses those instructions, never makes a mistake. Because these are toxic, these are some materials. The guide is a label, which is elaborate and in very plain English.
Okay. Robert, if we may talk about now promoting alternatives to chemical pesticides, such as organic farming or integrated pest management. Yes. Are there any efforts towards that?
Yes. As a country, there are efforts towards promotion of use of alternative options as opposed to conventional pesticides. There's a lot of effort and also a lot of interest to both sides, to the ones who are actually producing these products and also to the farmers, because I think with education, with knowledge, people are appreciating the way to go bio, because you reduce some of these incidences in terms of residue exceedances. There is a lot of products, and Lawrence will allude to that being registered, biopesticides, going under the whole registration process and getting them out to the market. And the trick is actually to be able to market these products in an effort to reduce incidences of residues being found in the final commodity, final produce. And one way is actually either to use them standalone, as biopesticides, or you do what is called a combined use of both the conventional pesticides and the biopesticides, where actually what you want to mitigate is getting lower residues at the time of consumption, where you actually use conventional probably at the beginning of your growing season. Then as you come to the end, you introduce your bio. So that, working hand in hand, you reduce issues around pesticides. There is also issues around the IPM, integrated pest management, programs, where you reduce the use of conventional pesticides. Use cultural practices where crop rotation, as we know, and other ways that when used in combination, the net effect is that we won't have exceedances of maximum residue levels in the final commodity that we are availing to the consumer. Okay. So there's a lot of positive direction movement towards biopesticides, yes.
Lawrence, what are the benefits and challenges of using biopesticides and natural pest control methods in the Kenyan agriculture sector?
Yes, again, we keep on repeating the one, pesticides are hazardous, and in opportunity around departure from use of pesticides, which is very highly encouraged. by government, and the PCP and the KFS takes lead on that. The biopesticides have very low toxicity levels as compared to conventional pesticides. In fact, most of them are plant extracts, or is maybe a small microorganism eating other microorganism. It's going to be a pesticide. So they are very safe as compared to conventional pesticides. And also using pesticide, the issues of residue limits, the residues may not arise or will not arise at all. They are generally, as compared to pesticides, they are safe. They are much safer than the conventional pesticides.
Okay.
Because now we have a regulation around there, we are promoting that agenda. At the moment, we have more than 100 of these biopesticides registered, and we are encouraging the industry to bring more on board so that we mitigate this issue of food safety as a country.
So farmers can actually get those biopesticides at their various agrovets, right?
They're available around the country in the various agrovets.
Okay. Robert, how can Kenyan farmers maybe adopt now pest control practices while also maintaining productivity?
Yes, it's a balance. It's a balance in terms of what you'll use in your production system, but it's also optimal use of some of these products we are talking about, because we know farming is a combination of many other things apart from pesticides that you are using at the farm, and it will include from the basic seed that you use in terms of planting should be quality. The type, the nature in which the soil of where you're planting, what you're, planting, the soil should having the right nutritional, composition. And all this, add up to issues around, sustainable productivity. But when you come back to pesticides, I think it will be, optimal use of the pesticides in the right way, not exceeding what you're supposed to, to use. In the interest of first, is also economical to use the right amount of pesticides, when you're farming. Secondly, we know that it's also translating to safer foods for the consumer. It's also contributing to more trade in what we are selling out, what we are trading with our regional and international partners. And if this happens, of course, we know in terms of economics, we'll be expanding our economic base in terms of revenue, the jobs which are being created. So I think that's the way in terms of judicious use of the pesticides, and also looking at holistically, even the type of seed you are using, the soil in which you are cultivating, they all add up to increased productivity.
Okay.
Yes.
Looking at, or rather having been in the industry for years, and I would like you to ask, and both of you, I wanted to pose this question to both of you, and would you say pesticides that are used in Kenya is about food production, or is it a big business? Start with you, Robert.
Pesticide use in Kenya is about production, or is it a big business? Yes. It is a business, pesticide use in Kenya. And we know, as you have heard, over the years in terms of the volumes which are being used in farming, we're increasing every year in terms of the pesticide volumes which farmers are using. But again, as we say, it is a balance. You need to balance the business part of it and the productivity in terms of, are you producing safe food for the consumer? So it has to be balanced, and I think the only way is that every player across the value chain does their work, so that what we actually avail to the consumer is safe. So it's a responsibility across the chain of use of pesticides from the beginning to the end. So I can say maybe that's the only way where you can actually balance the business with safe productivity in terms of what we are consuming as as Kenyans, and also what we are exporting to our trading partners.
What are your thoughts, Lawrence? Are we using pesticides? Is it about food production, or is it a big business?
In Kenya, and actually within the tropics, you cannot do commercial agriculture without using pesticides. So pesticides are used for productivity, to increase our production, because of the many pests that are in Kenya and in Africa because of the temperatures. So we cannot have any economic, any commercial agriculture without the pesticides. So pesticides are used for production. On the other hand, the companies that are selling these pesticides to us are in business. So pesticides issue is both production in agriculture and also is a business for the manufacturers of pesticides. Remember also, when we have good production, there is a commercial part of it. Where the farmer produces more is what is available for the farmer, and they export. We have a big market for our production. So even the products or even the produce we have is a component of business, because we export, there's family income, national income.
Okay.
So it's our own business issue around the pesticides. It's actually commercial and the production. It's business, it's production, either on the science of crops or even the science of developing these pesticides.
Okay. Having interacted with farmers, would you say there are farmers who are overusing certain pesticides? And if so, what is being done to manage this?
We probably can make hypothesis of overuse through the standards that we generate, because we generate surveys and we do develop reports, and they are made available also to the public. So in situations where we find exceedances of the maximum residue limits allowed under context, they exist in a particular crop, one likelihood is that there was an overuse of that pesticide. So you cannot speak with authority there's an overuse. You can only make a deduction or a conclusion from the results that we make from the surveys. Other monitoring that are done by KFS, and also the samples that also PCB collecting and running the tests in the labs. We find some exceedances. We can think around overuse of pesticides or inappropriate use of pesticides. You cannot speak to the authority because we're not there when the farmer is actually spraying.
Okay. Robert, the problem of pesticides resistance among pests. I'd like to know what is being done from your end and what solutions are being implemented to tackle this.
Oh yeah, pesticide
resistance. Yeah.
Yes, it's a common problem because we are getting that most of the pests also are getting adapted to continuous use of the pesticides. They adapt, they become more resistant to the products which are actually being manufactured, or the molecules which we thought traditionally were effective. They are losing that kind of efficacy in terms of prevention, in terms of control of pests. Then that's an issue, and I think working in the industry where even pest control products is involved is to encourage use of other molecules. You don't use continuously one molecule, one regime in terms of the season when you're growing your crop, so that also we reduce this issue of resistance to the pesticides which we do have. And it's something that it has to be done. It's something that farmers have to be made aware on the best use of some of these pesticides which we are using. Because again, what happens is that if the pests develop that resistance, you'll be moving towards more powerful and more kind of toxic pesticides. Probably you'll move from the lower level, to the higher level in terms of the WHO classes of pesticides. And that's not where we want, the direction we want to take. So yes, it's something which is, happening across the,
okay.
these value chains.
And how significant, Lawrence, is the cost of pesticides in the overall expenses of small-scale farming farmers in Kenya?
Well, that may not be possible to evaluate very well, because the farmers use different quantities and the pesticides are priced differently. There's the whole cost benefit analysis will vary on the farm sizes and the enterprise or the value chain that is used. So it may not possible to give an analysis of the production of the pesticide.
What of pesticide subsidies? Do they play a role in helping farmers access these products?
We only get government subsidies in the event of an invention of migratory pests. These international pests, when they come in the country, like when we had the locust, we are in the armyworm. The government may come in the subsidies to support the farming community. So in the other situations, the farmer is one who procures the pesticides for use in their farms.
Okay. Looking at, of course, the ongoing efforts, of course, what was just said by the government to revise pesticides policies in line with the global standards and environmental concerns, are there an ongoing efforts towards that now as you look at the future outlook?
Yes, it's happening. In fact, we have just have our regulations reviewed, and we are gazetted this July as part of improving the legal framework to improve on the pesticides management. The PCP Act is also being reviewed. In fact, as we speak, it's in Parliament now. There's a lot of improvement in that Act. I'm going to address many gaps that have emerged since PCPP came into being to manage the pesticides industry in the country.
What are these gaps?
There are gaps on part of the farmer. There are some gaps on the responsibility of the farmer around misuse of pesticides. There's a gap there. There's a gap also on enforcement. In the event there's some compliances that are not very clear. There's also a gap on the qualification of the people in the business, right from those who are selling pesticides all the way to the outlets. Those gaps are on academic. There's a gap on the personnel at PCPMB. There's a gap on collaboration with the county government, among other gaps that are being addressed by that bill that's being reviewed.
Okay. Robert, when it comes to, of course, safeguarding the health of the consumers, how are you, what's the role are you playing as CAFES to ensure that, of course, you safeguard the health of the consumers at the same time protect the environment?
Yes, in terms of safeguarding the consumer, is a lot of education, a lot of awareness. The key is actually to pass this information to the right people. And we conduct a lot of, if you look at our calendar in terms of the interactions with the farmers, is a lot, so that we actually visit where they are. We are able to furnish this information to them. And as I earlier said also, because we know we don't have that extension capacity in terms of reaching as many as we would want, is actually also to use the county governments who have that, they are the last point in terms of reach out to the farmers, provide this information, educate the extensionist, so that they can also pass this message, because it can't be done alone. It's a concerted effort where every player, in food safety is supposed to, play their respective roles. And we do that a lot. And, this information, we churn it out, because, once we get that information, we know that these are the most problematic pesticides. They are being misused. We are having higher than, allowable limits in certain commodities. Is to provide that information, to the people who are, in the space of food safety.
Is there goodwill from the county governments?
Yes, a lot of goodwill, We have done a lot of trainings, a lot of information sharing, where we actually visit, the counties, bring them together, share this information, and you can actually see, the appreciation in terms of, this is information probably we didn't have. And it will serve more use, now that we have this information, when we are passing on, we are educating the farmers on what are the real issues around the pesticide themselves, and also the commodities in which they are using these pesticides. So it provides, a lot of information, in terms of policy formulation, information that can be used directly, by the farmers, in terms of, educating them on the best or, food safety practices that they're supposed to employ when they're farming.
Okay. Lawrence, where can farmers go to when they encounter this problematic pesticides? Because you alluded to a website earlier on where they can get this information about this pesticides.
The information about pesticides, one, after all registrations are done, the list of registered pesticides is posted in the PCPB website. It's very elaborate with all the required columns. It's a table there with the relevant columns, and it's free to access. Every farmer can read there. Then beyond there, the details of that particular pesticide, which are appearing on the label to guide the farmer not to use the pesticides, they have also been uploaded in the website. So after you get into the list, there's the next level. There's a box which you guide now the farmer to the next level of that particular pesticide and be able to read now the detail on the label, so that now the farmer can use the pesticide properly.
Okay. As we come to a close, I'd like to give us the future of pesticides use in Kenya and how it looks like moving forward. Are we looking at more sustainable practices? Robert?
The future of pesticides in Kenya looking forward. Pesticides, we won't do away with them for a long time. We really need pesticides. As a country where we are located, in the tropics, the menace of pesticides is vast. And then what will be the main issue is actually judicious use of these pesticides. We have to learn how to live with the pesticides in terms of use, in terms of educating the people, in terms of even innovation. Talk about getting more molecules, so that farmers have more choices, and in that case also getting out safer molecules, as opposed to what we're having. And again, the future looking at it is that we might be drifting also to biopesticides as a solution towards the detrimental effects of these pesticides as we have had. And this cannot again be done alone. Is a strategy where you have to use the biopesticides together with the conventional, and in the broader aspect together with integrated pesticide management practices. Because as we know, the conventional don't work as fast as biopesticides. So it has to be a combination. It is a trick of actually combining everything together to have safe produce at the end of at the consumer, whatever is provided for the consumer. So to me, that's the way to go. And also I think in terms of this, in the space of regulations, also to come up with regulations in terms of monitoring, inspections, so that also we, on our part as government, also we are able to try and help and actually monitor what is happening, so that you don't get products which are not supposed to be there in the market, and again, where even the user of these products doesn't have enough information about the products. And I think it's across the chain, from the people who are manufacturing to the people who are actually using these products in the farm, and the people who are actually even spraying, because some people use sprayers, teams to spray their farms, so that everybody understands the nature and the uses of pesticides, and also mainly the detrimental effects of these pesticides.
Okay.
Yes.
Lawrence, is there like a guidebook based on what Robert is talking about, where you're able to use conventional pesticides as well as biodiversity pesticides? You balance that whole equation.
What we have as small booklets on topical issues around the pesticides to support the trainings we do to the growers and the farmers. Topical subjects. There's more booklets. There are also some other materials in form of guidelines, some circulars that also are there available to guide or support the farmers on how to use the pesticides more judiciously.
Maybe if you can educate the farmers in terms of how they can balance both.
Yeah, the principle here is that we advise the farmers to use the biopesticides where applicable. Sometimes it's possible. And you can bring pesticides on board, or the conventional pesticides on board, when the problem is not resolved by biopesticides. This is the principle of integrated pest management. So we advise the entry point is non-pesticide options. If they are available, use them. For example, the greenhouse, you put a barrier. There is no pest that will get into your farm. You put a net around your farm. It will stop this pest entering into your farm. These are options available outside pesticides. If there are biopesticides available for that particular problem, use them. If you are defeated now, go to the pesticides themselves, the conventional pesticides. We train that kind of, make that kind of training to the farmers. Again, if there is a pesticide under class 4, which is safer than class 3, and they do the same treatment to the crops or to manage the same pests or manage the same diseases, choose the one which is less toxic. And because the farmer can compare, especially the commercial farmers have employed agronomists, people who can navigate through the list and choose what is least toxic to that particular crop.
Okay.
We have those packages that we pass to the growers, to the farming community and other stakeholders.
Okay. Before we come to a close, there's a food and a feed safety control coordination bill. What's the bill all about, Robert?
The food and feed food safety coordination bill is a bill which is actually being formulated, and it came into being because it saw the need. Because if you look at the food safety management control system in Kenya, is so disintegrated. It has a lot of duplications. It has a lot of gaps. So it sought to bring institutions who are in the space of food safety under one, under one coordination structure. And looking at it, this is the way to go, because it actually looks at all aspects, all the players in food safety in terms of food control systems. It looks at the national government, the department and agencies. It looks at the county level, so that all these people come together under the office of the food controller, so that issues around food safety can be channeled, effectively. Gaps can be resolved. There's a one point of reporting. So, all these reports can be put together, so that we don't have what the firefighting situations which are, we encounter every day. There's a food safety issue, but nobody knew it would happen. It was not even anticipated. So I think this is the way to go, and is a process which is ongoing in terms of having this to be enacted.
Okay.
Okay.
As we close, Lawrence, I had posed this question to Robert, and of course he answered, but I'd like to hear from you as well. What does the future of pesticides use in Kenya look like, and are we moving towards more sustainable practices?
Thank you. I think I said earlier that in Kenya and actually Africa, because of the temperature levels and the profile of the pests we have, we have no choice other than using pesticides for commercial production. So pesticides usage in Kenya will grow because also the area under agriculture is growing. So we are seeing a positive projection on use of pesticides. One, we are seeing even new pests emerging each year, and also there is expansion of production. The area under agriculture is also improving. So the usage of pesticides will grow as we move on. Okay.
Thank you so much, Robert Koigi, Principal Lab Analyst at CAFIS, as well as Lawrence Kawala, for the General Manager at PCPB, that is the Pest Control Products Board. Thank you for coming and having this conversation on the use of pesticides. And of course, you have clearly told us that, of course, you have to use the pesticides in the right amount, as well as the right concentration of pesticides in water, soil, and food, and also in terms of the related impacts. Now we take a short commercial break. We'll be right back and with the conversation on industrializing Kenya.
Will you focus, you cabbage face? This kind of speech is for those who use their brains. You, on the other hand, could use water and soap.
Guys! Julia and Vala have eaten all the food. Now we are going to die in the jungle.
Will you keep your voice down?
You know, I had no plan of going out like this, just so you know. And Julia, just know you're the worst planner in the history of planning.
What is your problem? Eh? Why can't you just enjoy the trip like the rest of us?
We might have taken the wrong van. Whose van is this?
I'm feeling the music in the air.
Mzee,
Utiaji.
we, washtakiwa?
Wewe utiaji itakumaliza wewe mzee. Na wewe hata chupi unaipa ya nini? Na wewe si msichana. Wewe ni mjinga ya wapi hata wewe?
Kwa nini hiyo miaka yote ikawa ni siku hiyo tu umetuitania polisi?
Ninyi wote ni kama mlirokwa.
Wewe nyamaza.
Na mali si tulikuja tukakumwagia takataka.
Hapana.
Hapana, si ndio? Na usiniongeleshe na malingo kwa sababu hata mimi niko na malingo. Wewe ulikuwako tukienda kumwaka hizo takataka?
Si ndo?
Ulikuwa tukienda kumwaka hizo?
Mimi alikuwa hiyo ndo
wewe maacha kuongea ukweli.
Ngoja.
Unafutanga bangi?
Tumii bangi.
Sasa ni swali gani hilo?
Maana anaongea vitu za ujinga, yani mtu mzima.
Wewe ukimwangalia huyu anavuta bangi. Well, thank you for still staying with us. We move on to the second hour of Biz Check. And as I had alluded on earlier, we'll be talking about the manufacturing sector, industrializing Kenya. And of course, you know very well this is key to the Kenya Kwanza administration, as it marks, of course, next week, the second year that they will be in government. And we'll be seeing the different developments in the manufacturing sector in the last 2 years. And of course, to expound this for us, we are joined by Job Wanjohi, who is a policy analyst, or rather advocacy at the Kenya Association of Manufacturers. Welcome to our studio.
Thank you so
much. Now looking at assessing the current state of the manufacturing sector, I would like to hear from you. 2 years now under the Kenya Kwanza administration, as we mark, of course, next week, them being in government. How would you assess the current state of the manufacturing sector?
Thank you so much. I have to state that the manufacturing sector compounded annual growth rate has been increasing in terms of the turnovers, the value-added turnovers. Today we are talking of about 1,050,000,000,000 Kenya shillings. If you compare with when the Kenya Kwanza government was coming into place, we were at around 800 billion Kenya shillings. That means there is an increment of about 200 billion in terms of value addition. This is not within what we have set as an ambition, because we are looking at an annual growth rate of 1.7%, accumulating to 20% by 2030. We have lagged, but the best thing is that we are moving ahead in terms of growth. However, when you look at what now is called the contribution to the GDP, you find that the manufacturing sector has been inversely now sliding down from the high of 7.8%, that is in 2022, to 7.6% in 2023. We don't have the statistics for 2024. Why this has happened is because we have some other sectors that are growing faster. It's like we have 100% piece of a cake. You find that there are some sectors that are growing faster than the manufacturing, even if in terms of our quantums, what I was describing before, it's increasing from 800 billion to a trillion Kenya shillings. So that means other sectors, telecommunication, talk about transportation, it is they are improving better than the manufacturing sector. So the question that begs is, what can we do to the manufacturing sector so that it is able to grow faster as other sectors are growing today.
Okay, you've talked about, of course, the target being 20% by 2030, but here we are in 2024. We are 6 years now to Vision 2030. Are we likely to achieve the 20% growth?
I would say that there is huge potential. If you look at the importation level of manufactured goods into this country, especially those things that we can produce, you realize that the importation of the finished goods into the country, machineries and spare parts, starts at about 1.7 trillion Kenya shillings. That's based on the statistics of the Economic Survey 2023. That means in that importation ratio, we have an area that we have a share that we can eat into, and subsequently then that's the share that we are going to replace with local production. If you look at the quantums in terms of the food products that we import, they start at about 500 billion Kenya shillings. If we can support through what is called agriculture for industry, backward integration of the sorghum, of the maize, the rice, talk of the groundnuts, the peanuts, and many other products that we import into the country. Yet we have abundance production. This is what then can help us. Otherwise, increase the manufacturing sector capacity in the country, the activities that are happening in the manufacturing sector, and then we are able to do the value addition. Today we are only doing what is called the last mile production, whereby the intermediate products that come at about 65% value added already are the one that we add the value of the next 35%. If we can have the raw materials in the country in terms of that rice, and then we are packaging it ourselves instead of getting it from Pakistan. In terms of our textile, we have the cotton to fashion belts that are running from Kwale, from the western region, where we have which are comparative regions in terms of the cotton growing, and then we have the apparels being made in the country. This is huge potential. If you look at the leather products, again, you find most of our leather shoes, we import the leather shoes, and even a lot of the leather shoes, the fabric shoes also, which we can make locally. So it's a question of being intentional as a country, ensuring that there is policy harmonization, ensuring that we are reading from the same spirit, the same letter, from the county government to the national government, from state and non-state actors, so that we can be able to drive this. So 20% is possible. Okay,
and I know we will come to that and we will delve into it more, but I would like to hear from you in terms of challenges. I know there are so many challenges that manufacturers are facing in terms of course, high energy costs among many, but I'd like to hear from you in the last 2 years. What are the key challenges that you have identified as the association?
One of the key challenge, and it's a global challenge, is the competitiveness of the manufactured goods. And you realize that this has been affected by various factors. One of it is, I've said that we are a heavy importer of the raw materials. The forex destabilization, you find it has been fluctuating. It ran from as low as 115 shillings, going to 163, and now we are in the region of 130, 129. So that fluctuation makes the manufacturers get what is the forex loss. And subsequently, if there's that forex loss, it eats into the manufacturing sector's profit margins. And then you find that there's no major ambition to go ahead. That's one. When you look at what is called the fiscal space, we have seen some disruption, and this is what even led to the rejection of the Finance Bill 2024, because of some raft of measures that have been introduced and they were not working for the manufacturing sector. And some of the measures that are contained in the Finance Act 2023, of which now it is pending determination in the Supreme Court, there are some areas that we were feeling we had some reservations on. So the fiscal space is a bit squeezed in terms of excess duty, in terms of export promotion investment levy, talk about the pay, which was increased up to that 5%, and many other factors that you find that are not working for the sector. The other issue in terms of challenge is regulatory framework. You find there is regulatory overreach. An agency can have, an institution or a company can have agencies visit by about 30 staffs from the national and the county government. One is coming to check on fire from the national government. Another one from the county government is coming still to check on fire. Another one is coming to look at the human safety in the working environment. So you find the area is so much crowded. If we have a bill today that is coming in place or a policy that's coming in place, you find that all these policies are introducing new fees and introducing new charges, and this now crowds out on the manufacturing, manufacturing sector. So in terms of the regulatory overreach is there, in terms of ease of doing business is there, and also in terms of cost of doing business. Okay. And if you look at what is called United Nations Industrial Development Organization, IDEX, we start at 108th position in terms of competitors or the cost of production out of 152 countries that participate in that IDEX. That means we are worse off than another 107 countries globally that are better off than us in terms of a global competitiveness. So those are some of the challenges that we are looking at, that we are facing, amongst others that probably, if you have time, we can discuss. Okay.
How effective you've talked of government policies. We have seen the Big Four agenda in the previous regime. Here we are, we have better, the bottom economic transformation agenda. How effective are these government policies in terms of growing the manufacturing sector?
I would say that every policy, every strategy that is developed has to be ambitious. And that's why you saw in the Big Four agenda there was an ambition to grow the manufacturing sector to 15%. The Kenya Kwanza government came with its own manifesto and talked of manufacturing sector need to grow up to 20% because that is the ambition. That's where they feel that the manufacturing sector should get into. These strategies and policies are good. Follow-up is a problem. You find we have very good intentions, but along the way, because there is expenditure on the part of the government, there is policy prescription on the part of government, there is farm-level intervention on the part of the private sector, and many other issues you find they are disjointed. The government is talking about the growth of the leather sector, for instance, and for us to grow the leather and leather product sector, you find that we need the raw hide and skin in the country. But as we are setting stage as a private sector to ensure that we are mopping up the raw hide and skin from the abattoirs and the slaughterhouses, the government is busy in the boardroom changing the export levy from 80% to 50%, which is going to encourage exportation of the raw hide and skin outside the country rather than retaining the same here inside the country. So you find that disjointed approach in terms of policy prescription, the intention of the private sector and the government. That's what affects some of these strategies and policies that you're talking about. So bottom line is they are good, but follow-up, monitoring and evaluation is not happening. Sometimes lack of financials on the part of the government. Other times it's a lack of commitment from the private sector and also from the part of the government. And I think we need to fix this by ensuring that we are driving some of this agenda as a common good for the benefit of the nation.
Okay. And of course, the president has been very vocal in terms of growing the manufacturing sector. And he did say that Kenya must move away from being, of course, a market for other countries, to being a manufacturer of our own goods for export. Do you think that is something in the near future we can see?
Yeah, it's possible. That's what we call the import substitution. I gave the figures of where the imports are and where the exports are today. Imports about 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings. Exports about 900 billion Kenya shillings. That means we are exporting less than what we are importing. And when we look at that import bill, there are things that we can make locally. Leather products. Talk about textile products, talk about food products, some of them that we are bringing into the country. This is what that can be made, can be farmed in the country, can be produced in the country, can be value added in the country. But now when you look at, and again I get back to the intention, when you look at the prescription, it's good. But the intention along the way, you find it becomes a bit distorted because there is a ready trader who want to bring a leather product without too much hassle in the country, So they just want to bring into the country without that value addition. So this is a finished product, if it's a shoe. And once it's coming to the country, you find sometimes there's misdeclaration, there is substandardization of some of these products, and many other forms of illicit trade and other valuation. Subsequently, you find that this defeats the local intentions of growing the manufacturing sector. So in terms of import substitution, as the president is intentioning, it is or is intending, is something very critical and something that is viable, something that can be done. But now we need to be more intentional in terms of how our consumption patterns. If when you go to the supermarket, are you looking at what is made in Kenya, or are you going to buy what is made in Kenya, as opposed to what is a niche in the market which comes from London or comes from Turkey? Are you going first of all to consider what is locally manufactured? So the intention is good, but we need also to ensure that there is follow-up of this intention as far as import substitution is concerned.
Okay. As a private sector, what additional policy changes or interventions that are needed to enhance the sector's competitiveness?
We have what we can call the inbound process, the in-factory process, and outbound process. That is when we are collecting the raw materials, intermediate products, so that they come into the factory. That's what is called inbound process. You find along the way there are various things that need to be fixed in terms of the road and railage transportation. The tariffs that are being offered are still not very competitive. When you talk about the demurrage costs and storage costs, probably in the port of Mombasa, and I have to commend the effort that has been done today, because we can see the release of goods happening, most of the goods being released within the 4 days free period. But you find again in terms of the costs of like now some of these inputs, like now the petroleum product for logistic purposes, it has been high for the last 2 or 2.5 years. So that's inbound process. When we come to the in-factory process, the cost of labor, though if you compare ourselves with China today, we are more cheaper than China in terms of the cost of labor. But if you compare ourselves with other developed nations, we are worse off, and we need to look at how can we increase our production capacity or productivity per capita, so that we bring down the cost of production. In terms of the cost of energy, you find that today we are at 19 cents US dollars per kilowatt per hour, as compared to our peers in the region, Tanzania, Uganda, go to Ethiopia, whose cost of production in terms of electricity is very low. If you go to Uganda, there's subsidized rate of 0.05 US dollars per kilowatt per hour, as opposed to us who are at 0.19. When again you are looking at the cost of water, the cost of the sewer maintenance. When you look at even the cost of construction today, it has really gone up. Like now, when you talking about the bag of cement, or talk about the bag of metal that is used for construction, that is in-factory process. Outbound process, in terms of multiple fees and charges being charged by the county government and the national government, when you're moving your goods from one point to the other, or when you're shipping your goods outside the country, you find that it's attracting some charges. So that needs to be fixed, so that we can see a seamless process of the manufacturing sector and the products that are coming from the manufacturing sector.
Okay. Earlier on, you did allude, of course, to the withdrawal of the Finance Bill 2024, and here we are, the contentious now 2023. Are there tax reforms, maybe as the private sector and from where KAM sits, that you are advocating for going forward?
Carol, I may not dive into this conversation that much, because this is a matter that's live before the Supreme Court, but doesn't mean that we didn't have some issues that were present in the Finance Act 2023 that we are looking at how they can be reversed. Like now the excise submission by the accessible goods manufacturers, whereby today it's 24 hours, and we are looking at how it can be a full cycle of a month. When we're talking about the Export Promotion Investment Levy, we had gotten into an agreement with the government that the rate of 17.5% is high on some of these products like cement and metal products, and we had reached an agreement of about 10%, and how we can have paradigm shift from charging the export promotion investment levy on raw materials and intermediate products to the finished products that are coming to the country, whereby we have abundance production, because you look at what is called the EAC Common External Tariff Book, and you can see all the goods that are being charged 35% are the goods that we have abundance production here in the country, and we're being protected from importation by charging higher duties. So that's what, again, is supposed to be to attract what is called the export promotion investment levy, not what is coming at 0% or what's coming at 10% in terms of import. So those are two critical areas that we were looking at. There are other duties under the excise duty regime that we are looking at how they can be revised, and also we had, like now, the issue to do with the change that happens on the excise duty, which happens annually, being revised to 5 years. So those are some of the wins that were in the Finance Bill 2024 that were revising what was in the Finance Act 2023.
Okay, looking at now innovation and technology, I'd like to know what role does innovation and technology play in the growth of the manufacturing sector?
Innovation and technology is quite critical, and this is where we are moving as a globe. Today we are talking of third industrial revolution and shifting to fourth industrial revolution, whereby there is machine learning, there is artificial intelligence, there is robotics and interaction with the human beings. So this is very critical. One, there is homogeneity of the products that are coming through digitization of our processes. So you find the products look very similar in terms of the output, as opposed to when you are hard crafting, because you'll not be able to get the curves as they are if you're talking about the furniture and so on. The other thing is the efficiency. You find that companies are able to drive efficiency in terms of their operations. They are able to produce their goods faster. They're able to produce the goods that are more standardized than it has been before. We are also able to operate our machineries for production when we are seated in our offices in very different spaces in the globe. So you find that the control of some of these systems doesn't have to happen with an expatriate being based here in the country, but can be based elsewhere in the globe. And subsequent to that now reduces the cost of labor. So we are looking at an interface between labor production and digital production, so that because as a country we are labor intensive, we don't lose on this, but also we are digitizing our processes so that we can move into the efficiency space, we can move into timeliness space, but also not losing focus on labor intensity that we have as a country.
So are Kenyan manufacturers integrating sustainable and digital practices, and maybe to stay competitive in the global space?
Yes, we are. And that's what I was talking about. Because if we don't ensure that there is sustainability, and sustainability is going to be achieved through this way. If you retool and reskill our labor force, instead of thinking that this is how we do things, you move them into the digital space in terms of the skill that one has. And we have an academy that is based in Kenya Association of Manufacturers, whereby we pick college students, and we have developed a curriculum that is tailored to the needs of the industry today in terms of machine learning, robotics, artificial intelligence, so that one comes and get reskilled and retooled. Even we are working with international partners to ensure that this is happening, so that we remain sustainable. Otherwise, if we say that we are going to drop some workforce because they lack a certain skill, they lack a certain strength, you find that we can cause economic instability, economic insecurity in the country. We can cause social upheavals, social insecurity in the country. And so that's why we are looking at it more sustainably by saying we are infusing technology by ensuring that on this other side, we are reskilling the labor.
Okay. Yeah. Looking now at the African Continental Free Trade Area, I would like to know how has that agreement impacted manufacturing sector in Kenya?
African Continental Free Trade Area is a major trade agreement that we are working with at the moment. And it came to force beginning of 2021. It is a market that has 1.3 billion people, and we have a GDP, aggregate GDP of 3.4 trillion US dollars. And that's very huge, because if you compare with Kenyan only, it's about 100 billion US dollars. So if you compare with 3.4 trillion US dollars, that's a huge change, paradigm shift in terms of the market size. So we have been sitting in the negotiation at the negotiation table to ensure that the tariff negotiations as they happen. Even today, we have a team that is in Arusha that is looking into some of these tariffs in Category B and Category C, because we have some others in Category BA that were finalized, and we are doing trade adder. So we have seen preferential trade happening, whereby some of Kenya goods that could not access West Africa without paying duty, today they are accessing West African market preferential without paying the duties, as opposed to when the AFCTA was not there. And we're operating at what is called Guided Trade Initiative. So there is reduction in terms of the cost of transport, reduction in terms of the cost of the market entry, because you're not paying the duties. The second thing that we have seen is that we have seen foreign direct investment and local direct investment happening, because there are those investors who are scouting for opportunity by saying Kenya is part of African Continental Free Trade Area, and we will be able to access this huge market with a GDP of 3.4 trillion US dollars. So they are setting base here in Kenya so that they can be able to access the East African community and the rest of Africa using Africa Continental Free Trade Area. The other thing also that is happening is in terms of the product diversification. You find that the product that we make here in Kenya and our consumption patterns are not so different from the Central Africa, West Africa, and so on. As opposed to when you go to Europe or you go to Asia, you find there is similarity of the product. So Kenyan product, which cannot probably easily penetrate the European market, are able to penetrate the African market better at the African Continental Free Trade Area. So we have seen benefits, but we have also some major works that need to be done in terms of physical connectivity, in terms of digital trade, in terms of sustainability of our custom practices, in terms of inclusion of women and inclusion or engendering the trade. So those are the issues that need to be looked into going forward.
So, but what is the biggest challenge maybe with this after the African Continental Free Trade Area that manufacturers are facing in terms of trying to access the regional market and also, of course, the continental market?
Physical connectivity. If you look at railage, we're not continentally connected. If you look at sea freight, we don't have our own ships. If you look at air freight, our planes have to intermediate. They have to fly to Europe. They have to fly to Asia, whereby now the aggregation is happening of the goods that are coming again back to Africa. So that means you find a good is lifted from here in Kenya, has to first of all hit to Dubai, has then to start dropping down to Southern Africa. If you look at road connectivity, at least there we have something that has been done. You see this movement of trucks from Kenya to South Africa, from Kenya to Central Africa. However, when you look at our movement through road to some far-flung areas, like now if you look at the Democratic Republic of Congo, you go to the west of Congo, it is not penetratable from the east side, from the Goma side, from Kinshasa side, because there's no connectivity as far as the road connectivity is concerned. So that is one major problem, and I think there's one issue that we need to address at the African Union or at the AFCTA headquarters in Ghana, so that connectivity, when it happens, physical connectivity, when it happens, there is free movement of goods and services that is going to happen thereafter.
Okay. Yeah. Are there specific products categories that where Kenyan manufacturers are actually gaining a competitive edge or advantage internationally, or rather continentally?
Yes.
As well?
If you look at as a country, though we are an agrarian nation, you find that agro-processing really happens very well. But over and above that, we have techno-based sectors, like now automotive sector. You find that we have comparative advantage like now in the region. We have the auto manufacturers in the country who are able to access the East African community. They're able to access part of Southern Africa and part of Central Africa. If we are talking about the chemicals that we make in the country, we had a trade mission into Dar es Salaam recently. That was last year but one. And we realized that we have like our chemical and allied sector products that are selling in the shops in Dar es Salaam. That means we are able to penetrate some of this market. If you look at our textile products that are coming from like now export processing zone, the access through African Growth and Opportunity Act, or the AGOA, the access of these to the US, you find that in Africa we are leading in that category. And so that means there's some areas that we have comparative advantage and we need to maintain this. But there's some others that we lead as a country in terms of tea, in terms of coffee, but we have not created our own niche. We are known globally as the producer of this product, but we cannot say that globally there's one product that is known, that you can go to Tokyo, you can go to Los Angeles, and you can ask for that because of the branding problem. So we have in those areas, like now tea and coffee, pyrethrum, and that we need to look into, even in terms of value addition, because we are selling some of these goods as raw materials, like now tea. It's only 3% that is processed. 97% is sent outside the country and processed in raw form.
Coming back to our country, and of course looking at, we have seen the development of industrial parks, special economic zones. How are this boosting the manufacturing sector?
Some of these economic zones are very integral because what they do is that there is provision of fiscal, physical, and procedural incentives. Fiscal incentives in terms of like now the EPZ is coming up with various flagship projects across the country. You find that there is perpetual exemption of like now the excess duty. Or some of these fees and charges that are charged to anybody who is not in one of these economic zones. When you look at the corporation tax, how it's treated, you pay 10%, then you get to 25%, before now you get to 30% after a period of time. If you look at the provision of the physical incentive, roads have been built in some of these zones. We have water connectivity, we have electricity connectivity, and even you go like now to a special economic zone, you find that there is incentivization through low cost of power at 0.05 cents US dollar per kilowatt per hour. That's like now around Naivasha area where we have the geothermal. So they are very integral, and then they are able to drive industrialization to the rural counties. Because in instances where, as an individual, I don't want to put my capex or my capital expenditure in coming up with warehouses, production centers, or permanent production centers, you just go and rent out in some of these buildings that the government is coming up with. But we are looking at further allocation to some of these flagship projects in terms of SEZ, industrial parks, EPZ, so that we can see their fruition or they are completed, so that we see an uptake and operationalization of the same. Okay,
looking at the local content and supply chains, I'd like to know how the sector is performing in terms of promoting the local content as well as supply chain integration, particularly with SMEs.
As far as the local content inclusion is concerned, there is what is called Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, that promotes that 40% of public procurement needs to be directed to local sourcing. We have been working with the Ministry of Investment, Trade and Industry to track what or how this has been going on. And the last report shows that we are in the region of 20 to 23% in terms of local sourcing. In some products, we are in the region of 60% or 50%, but you find that the average that I'm talking about is is brought down by some other products that we are not sourcing locally. Otherwise, we're supposed to be sourcing locally. So in terms of Buy Kenya, Build Kenya is one area that we have been working with the government. And even we have developed what is called, we have come up with a list that we have abundance production in the country of about 1,000 tariff lines or 1,000 products, which we are asking the government to consider preferential sourcing from the private sector. So that is in terms of the local sourcing. And I have to say that the local sourcing, yes, it has been happening, but it needs to improve going forward.
Okay, actually that was my next question in terms of your strategies to encourage more local sourcing of raw materials and reduce reliance on imports. Is there something, of course, you're doing towards that?
Yes, we have, and I have mentioned what we call the Agriculture for Industry project or program.
All right.
And this program is looking at how can we reduce our reliance as far as the inputs are concerned that are imported and we can otherwise source locally. By sourcing locally, that means we need to build the capacity of the producers. So we are looking at the information asymmetry between, like now, the agro processors, that's the manufacturers, and the agro producers. These are the farmers and those others who are at that level, to ensure that there is information symmetry in terms of pricing, in terms of quality, in terms of predictability and provision of that input from the agro producers. So we have been coming up with that as one of the strategies to ensure that there is local sourcing that is happening and ensuring that the players along the value chains are using, like now the aggregation centers. Like now the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investment has come up with what is called the county aggregation and industrial parks. These parks are to do the aggregation in a farmer who has 2 acres, another who has 3 acres. They can go to the KIPes and they can aggregate their products. And we as manufacturers, we can pick the products from some of these centers. So that's one of the strategy that we're using so that we can promote more of the local sourcing.
Out of the skills gap, are there partnerships maybe with educational institutions to ensure there's a skilled workforce?
Yes, and we're looking at like now when we have the CBC, I have seen, my own children and other parents, they have their own children. We have seen the amount of work that we're doing to ensure that there is change on how we do our things in terms of the skilling of our students. When you're talking about the curriculum change, we are working with various institutions at the government level, like now Kenya, KIE, talk about KIRDI, talk about the Curriculum Development Center, to ensure that we have the right curriculums that are tailored to the right skills that are going to be deployed as agronomists and many others along some of these value chains. So that's another area that we have been keen on.
Okay. Yeah. Looking at incentives, and I know this has been key in terms of this government talking about rolling out incentives to attract investors. Is this something that, and then when you talk to other, of course, experts, they're also saying incentives are not good for this country. But from your perspective as the private sector, are rolling out incentives going to attract the right kind of foreign investments?
Incentives are globalized, and there is no country that doesn't provide incentives. And when you go to, like now, what is called the trade remedies, there is one part we talk about subsidization, subsidies that are provided by the government, and subsidies is part of incentives. At the subsidization, you find there is allowable subsidies and unallowable subsidies. And unallowable subsidies are the one that introduces unleveled and unfair playing field globally. So the removal of incentives is going to disadvantage the already existing manufacturers. And it's also going to discourage investments in the country. Because every investor who comes locally, comes locally or comes internationally, these investors, they take their P&L, profit and loss, and they have to do an analysis that is forward-looking for 7 years. How will it look like for me? Up to what point will I be able to make return on my investment? So they do all these analyses. So even if the government is saying that incentives is a tax expenditure, this tax expenditure, to a certain extent, it has really helped a lot in terms of job creation. And when the jobs are created, you reduce on the level of social insecurity, the level of economic insecurity, the level of physical insecurity, and subsequently, you're able to get direct and indirect taxes from that person. So you're able, again, to reduce on the levels of unemployment in the country. So you have to look at the incentive, you have to look at that incentive and blend it with the theory of change and see what are the outcomes that are coming out of this. Because the government may look at it, we are going to drop, but it can also realize that the dropping of the incentives is directly related with loss of jobs, loss of investment and whatnot. So I foresee a situation whereby dropping incentives for the private sector is going to discourage investment and production in the country.
Okay, but even with these incentives, the business environment, of course, is not conducive for the last couple of years for manufacturers, and we have seen companies close down and others relocate to other countries, basically on what you were saying, some of the challenges that manufacturers are facing. I'd like you to give us an overview of maybe the challenges that companies have been facing when it comes to the business environment.
One is the fiscal policy challenge. You find that taxation is very high. You are crowded out from the raw materials to operations to your payroll, to the process of taking a good out of the factory. So you find that there is that crowding out that has happened. And for every manufacturer who establishes his base in the country, compares himself or herself with another manufacturer in China, any other place, because we are in a global system whereby there is free interaction or movement of goods and services. So if your cost of production is high in the country, and the landed cost for goods that are coming from China is low, when you come now to compete in the local market, it is a Chinese goods that will move faster than the Kenyan locally produced goods. So you find the cost of production is very high in terms of taxation. You also move to another area, illicit trade. Illicit trade claims a very huge market in the country, and it is still a very huge market for the private sector. You find it takes different forms. There is substandard goods. You have electric cables, or you're talking about chemicals, talk about electronics and many other products. You find that an electronic that is coming from outside the country is substandard, but has been allowed into the country, and we have Kenya Bureau of Standard that has its own standard that have been put in place, but you find there is misgovernance around this area. So substandard goods are coming. You find others are undervalued and they are undercustomed. A good is underdeclared. Once it is underdeclared, lower duties are paid on that good. When it comes to the country, and me as a local producer have paid every duty, you find again I'm disadvantaged. So when you look at all these factors, they are the one that aggregate to a decision that a factory has to shut, a factory has to downsize, a factory has to move from Kenya to another country because of an environment that is not working very well for them. Again, earlier I talked about regulatory framework. It's quite crowded. You have 50 agencies that you're reported to. You find that even the administrative cost to ensure that this compliance also has gone very high. Why you're not moving into self-compliance, whereby you are telling manufacturers and other players in the sector or in the economy that we are moving into self-compliance with heavy penalties. And we are willing to do this, rather than to be crowded out by 30, 40 agencies as one institution.
How do we tackle illicit trade? Because it's been a thorny issue for many manufacturers.
Illicit trade is a question of enforcement because we have the right policies that have been put in place. Ensuring that we have enough capacity. We have adequate capacity in terms of the enforcement agencies. Rather than an enforcement agency is controlling exports worth 900 billion Kenya shillings and imports worth 1.8 trillion Kenya shillings, and we have only 2 or 3 officers that are seated there. You find there is that is under capacity. So if we have some of these agencies, like now Anti-Counterfeit Authority, talk about KEBS, talk about KRA, and many others that are intervening at the port of entry, they're intervening at the point of production, you find that can come down. Again, there is consumer awareness. Me as a consumer of a product, I need to be sensitized on what is fake and what is not fake, what is substandard and what is not substandard, so that at the point of my consumption, I can reject what is substandard and take what is standard. In terms of infringement on intellectual property right, because again, that's another area on illicit trade. You are able to know whose trademark is this and who has infringed on that trademark. Whose intellectual property right is this and who has infringed on it. By having tight security marks, by having track and trace systems that have been put in place. So those are some of the things that need to be deployed.
Would you give them a thumbs up? Would you give them a thumbs up when it comes to enforcement?
I would give them at the middle.
Okay.
At the middle. Yes. Over and above that, there is now the governance issue. You find in the illicit trade, there's a lot of corruption that is happening on the part of government, on the part of the private sector, because of the heavy competition that is happening, that you want your goods to come into the country at a lower cost so that you're able to hit the market. All these need to be tightened so that we can address illicit trade in terms of government losing revenues and in terms of the personal security, in terms of personal health, because it has been a major issue as far as the personal health and is concerned. Okay.
Now, as we come to a close, looking at the sustainability and, of course, green manufacturing, I'd like to hear from you in terms of the manufacturing sector, how it's addressing environmental sustainability and climate resilience.
We subscribe to UN Sustainable Development Goals, and like now the SDG number 13 on climate action, or the SDG number 12 on responsible production and consumption. When we are talking about ensuring that we are using green energy, I think that's SDG number 5 or number 6. We are at the forefront. We have been promoting the usage of geothermal in the national production, what is being fed into the grid. Happy to note that today, as far as green energy production is concerned, we are at about 87 to 90%. That's what we are relying on as manufacturing sector and as a nation. Over and above that, we have been incentivizing, or we have been calling for the government to incentivize the usage of, like now, solar, usage of wind power at our factory level. And what is extra that we produce, we can do net metering through the Energy Act of 2019, whereby we can sell part of these back to the government. So as an association and manufacturing, we are at the forefront ensuring that there is a promotion of green production and also usage of green energy. If you look at responsible production and consumption, what we call the circular economy, we have been establishing what is called the extended producer responsibility organizations in terms of the plastic sector, in terms of electronic sector, in terms, that is e-waste, and many others. You find even like now diapers and sanitary towels. We have an extended producer responsibility that has been established to ensure that there is circularity of some of these goods, that the waste is not dumped into the environment, is being used as an input somewhere else for further production.
Okay. What is the future outlook maybe for the manufacturing sector in the next 5 years? And of course you had alluded to the things that you're working on as KAM to ensure that we have a proper and a functioning manufacturing sector.
All factors held constant, ceteris paribus, we are optimistic, and this is based on the sector barometer that we released in July 2024, showing that there is optimism among us, and this is a survey that's carried out on the manufacturer themselves. There is optimism as far as the manufacturing sector performance is concerned in the next 6 months. That it was the same case the last 6 months. So that means in 1 year, we have seen optimism as far as the manufacturing sector players is concerned. Notwithstanding that they're not facing challenges, and notwithstanding that this cannot be sustained up to the 5 years that you're talking about, because the same barometer is talking about currently we are operating below capacity. Today, the cost of industrial input is very high. They are talking about the price increase on part of the manufactured goods, the goods that are manufactured locally, or even downsizing their workforce and reskilling their workforce. They're saying those challenges are persistent. But looking forward, we can see there is opportunity in the manufacturing sector in the country, and what they're calling for is a harmonized system, a harmonized environment between the government, the private sector, the non-state actors, international players, so that we are all moving towards one direction of industrializing the country.
What are KAM's main priorities and targets, maybe in the short and the long term?
In the short term, one of the major targets is how can we reduce the cost of power from where it is at 0.19 to 0.10, so that such power then can benefit manufacturing during the day and night. So that now is informed by now change of time of use tariff, or we're looking at the power system losses, which start at 23%, and many other changes that can be introduced under that category. Also in the short term, we are looking at the cost and the tenor of capital. We are happy to note that the central bank changed the base lending rate. Now we are, I think, in the region of 12% from the high of 13%. So if we move that direction, the cost of capital is going to be addressed, and we are likely to see borrowing by the SMEs, borrowing by the large manufacturers and other players in the economy are becoming more affordable than where it has been, because the commercial banks are lending at a high of 19, 20 something percent. So that's the second category that we are looking at. Another category is the cost of taxation, which also has been very high, and we are looking at, the government is talking about coming up with some amendment, or like now a miscellaneous amendment bill. We're looking at an address on some of the painful taxation measures that are in place in terms of pay, in terms of excise duty, in terms of export promotion investment levy, and many others that need to be addressed going forward. And the last one is when we are talking about the monetary policy in terms of the exchange rate, how it can remain stable at the moment, so that we minimize on the forex losses. In the long term is driving exports, ensuring that there is global competitiveness. We are at the 50th mark in the UNIDO IDEX. We are looking at the SME development, because that's the backbone of the economy, and how we can integrate large manufacturers to the SMEs and ensure that the SMEs, they are sustainable going forward. And also because we are an agrarian nation, looking at how we are going to drive the agriculture for industry for benefit of everybody.
Thank you, Job.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate that. Is Job Wanjohi, who is the head of policy and research and advocacy at Kenya Association of Manufacturers, of course, talking to us about growing the manufacturing sector. The target is 20% by 2030, and of course, is very optimistic that we are going to achieve that target, and ensuring that Kenya, of course, becomes, of course, not a supermarket of other countries, but to being a manufacturer of our own goods for exports. And that's why we put a cap on this morning's Biz Check. I now hand you over to Nancy Okare with Kurunzi Mashinani. My name is Njenga.
The art of bonsai is now famous the world over. Tiny trees